Hey everyone, today we're talking about using the tone curve to add brightness and contrast. Now, brightness and contrast is a great way to make your images pop and a really creative way to improve your photos. And now you can do all of the things we're going to talk about in this lesson using these sliders in the basics, in the basic editing window over here in Lightroom. It has a contrast, a brightness and contrast bar right here. And it has exposure, so brightness, contrast. And you can do the same types of thing with these highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks sliders down here. But today I just wanted to show you how to use the tone curve and explain brightness and contrast in another way. So here on this little line that you have in this square, you have your highlights, your lights, your darks, and your shadows. So as you go through, these little regions down here brighten or highlight are highlighted, and on this curve you have different things highlighted as well. You can just click it and drag up and down. So click a segment and drag up and down, and you can see that I'm affecting the highlights. So the light areas, the bright areas in the sky and on the face of this mountain. So I can also affect that by just using this slider if you want to do that. Some people like playing with this curve rather than using the sliders, and another way is to just type in a number down here. But whatever you prefer, you can do. One thing you might hear about is the S-curve, and that is a standard contrast curve that people edit with. And what that is when you bring up the highlights and the lights, and then you bring down the darks and the shadows, you get this S-looking curve. I can make it really dramatic by doing something like this. And then I can do something really dramatic like this, and you can see this S in the curve of this tone itself. But that's a little bit too dramatic, so I just want something a little bit less dramatic. And so say I have this, but I still want this contrast created with the tone curve, but I want the darks to be a little brighter. I can still go up to my basic editing tools with my shadows, bring them up. So the tone curve is an entirely separate editing tool so that you can still increase or decrease the contrast, but also bring up the shadows in another way. I know that's kind of confusing, and you might be like, well, why don't you just bring up the shadows here? And while that's a good idea, I still like having this S-curve that adds a little bit of contrast to my image. So that is how you use the tone curve, and that's how you create a more contrasting image. Now let me just show you another image that will look really good with the S-curve. So this one with the colors from Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. If I make that little S-curve, something like this, it's going to look really good. Again, I might want to increase the exposure overall a bit, and maybe the clarity as well to sharpen it up a bit. But this S-curve is going to look really good now with this photo. So if I undo these, you kind of have a semi-bland photo. But if I increase the lights, decrease the darks, really get that S going, that could be a very punchy photo that looks really good. So that's the S-curve, that's the tone curve, and let me know if you have any questions.